So this is what we call an entry or a text box. Now this control renders differently depending on what platform you're running this application on. In iOS, you can see it appears with a gray border. In Android, they don't have the border. Instead, they look like this. And by the way, these entries are tailored for getting a specific kind of input. For example, the first one is for getting a phone number. So when this entry gets focus, we get a numeric keyboard on the bottom of the screen. Or the second one is for email. And the last one is for password. So let's see how we can add these entries to our page. To add an entry, we use the entry element. Now here, we can optionally set the keyboard attribute, which is an enumeration. And here we've got keyboards for chat, for email, numeric, telephone, text, and URL. We can also set a placeholder, which is the text that appears here when the text box or the entry is empty. So phone. Now, if an entry is for capturing a password, we set is password to true. Now, in terms of events, we've got a couple of events here, but again, similar to stepper or slider, most of the time we don't do anything with these events. Instead, when the user finishes filling out a form, we capture all the values and save them somewhere. But let me show you these events and the difference between them. So we've got this event here called completed. Let's handle it. Now back in our XAML file, I want to add a label, give it an X name, label. When the completed event is fired, I want to set the text of this label. So back in our handler, label.text is completed. Let's run the application. I'm going to type something here. Now, when I press the return key on the keyboard, the completed event is fired. In contrast, we have another event called text changed. Now, we don't need this handle completed anymore, so I'm just going to delete this. In handle text changed, I'm going to set label.text to e. And here we have two properties, new text value and old text value. Let's use new text value here. Run the application. So back here, I'm going to type something. You can see this event is fired as I type each character in the text box. So in your applications, you may either want to do something as the user types each character or once the user completes the entry. So this is all about entries. We also have a similar control called editor. Entries are used for capturing a single line of text, like what you see here. But if you want to allow the user to type multiple lines of text, like when composing an email or a message, you should use an editor. So back here, I'm going to remove this stack layout and just add an editor on the page. And for this demo, I'm going to set its background color to yellow so you can see its bound. Let's look at the result. You can see that by default, it stretches to fill its container. Now, in this case, the white space we have around the editor is because of 40 units padding that I applied to the page earlier. But that aside, editor stretches to fill its container. And look, here we can add multiple lines of text. When we finish, we tap done and the keyboard disappears. Now let me show you something. If I take this editor and put it in a stack layout, let's see what happens. You can see it no longer fills the page. Why is that? I'm going to give this stack layout a background color. Gray. Let's look at the result. You can see the stack layout is stretching to fill its container, which is in this case the page. But the editor, because it's a child of stack layout, it's only taking a little bit of space. So we have a lot of unused space available for the editor to expand. And this means in your applications, if you have a page with multiple elements and somewhere on the page you want to have an editor, and you want to allocate this unused space to this editor, you should set its vertical options to fill and expand. So this will allow the editor to expand and get the available space. Let's look at the result. So to recap, we use editor for capturing multiple lines of text, whereas we use entry for capturing a single line of text. Both these controls have a property called text, which returns the current text in the control. Next, I'm going to talk about pickers.